Hello everybody, welcome to part 3 of the Willys project. We made a lot of progress in this video. We made some big repairs, we made some small repairs, and there's also a lot of random stuff that had to be addressed. So I've got a lot crammed into this video. It does jump around just a little bit, but I did my best to try to keep it smooth. So let's get right into it. Well, I got some parts in the mail yesterday, and one of those parts was this brand new ring gear that we've been waiting on. So before we can even think about getting this on, we have to get the old one off. And these things are not held on by any type of a fastener whatsoever. They are just machine fit, press fit, heat fit, whatever you want to call it. So in other words, the only way I'm going to get this new ring gear installed on the flywheel is to heat it up quite a bit. So I need to get the old one off first. I'm going to try to use that MAPP gas to heat it up, and should be able to just knock it off with the hammer and the punch there. All right, here it is removed, and I just wanted to show you this real quick. See, this has a bevel on this side. So let me flip it around. There's no bevel. The bevel side is the side that went towards the flywheel, and the other side faced out. This is the new ring gear, and if you set it down there where it's supposed to go, you can see it does not fit. That's how tightly these things are machined. And that's why heat is required. You have to get them to expand a little bit, just enough to fit down over the outer diameter of the flywheel and get pressed into place. So I'm going to try to do this myself before I take it to a machine shop and see if we can do this right here at home. I'm going to fire up the charcoal barbecue grill, and I'm going to get that sucker as hot as I can at hopefully at least above 600 degrees. And in the meantime, I'm going to get this outer edge of the flywheel all nice and clean. We'll get rid of that surface rust and age off of it. Well guys, the ring gear inside the barbecue is between 600 and 700 degrees, and we seem to be maxing out at that temperature. So I think I have to just go ahead and try this. Hopefully 600 to 700 degrees will be hot enough. If it isn't, then I'm gonna have to take it to a machine shop or something. And once I get it off the grill, I'm not gonna have very much time to screw around with it. So I'm gonna throw it on as quickly as I can, and fingers crossed, hopefully it'll work. Wow, it's already cooled off to 299 degrees there, 100 degrees there, 200 there. Oh yeah, it's on there. Let me just give it some love taps here. The flywheel right in this part is only 75 degrees. The ring gear still 100, only 83 there, 90 there, 80 there. So man, that really cooled down quickly, didn't it? All right, let's take a look at the edge here. If you can see, it got seated perfectly all the way around. I don't know if all flywheel ring gears are like this or not, but you can see these teeth are chamfered a little bit from the factory. On this side only. If you flip it around, they're straight cut. So this is the side that faces the engine, and the starter drive gear comes in from over here and engages the teeth like that. So they say just a little bit of chamfer there will help the gear engagement with the starter. But I just wanted to point that out because with this particular ring gear, you could get it on backwards. Now that we've got the ring gear reinstalled on the flywheel, let's go ahead and get the flywheel installed back on the engine along with the pressure plate and clutch. I've got my dots lined up so I know that the flywheel is going back on in the same position that we took it off. I've got new washers here for all these bolts. If you remember, we were missing 2 of them. I took some 220 grit sandpaper to the mating surfaces here, the flywheel, the pressure plate, and both sides of the clutch. And you know, if this was a race car, obviously we'd have this thing completely resurfaced, but it just really doesn't need it. This is perfectly fine for this vehicle. Let's go ahead and get the pressure plate and clutch installed. Here, before we do that, I just want to put a dab of blue Loctite on all these bolts. All right, don't forget to align the clutch. So you take a clutch alignment tool that's specific to your engine and stick it in there before you tighten the pressure plate bolts down, because that shaft down there has to fit perfectly into the hole right in there. All right, I've got all the bolts torqued and the clutch alignment tool should just come right out. You can take another look in there real quick. Well, that ring gear replacement was a heck of a lot of work, but it's done. Let's check that off the list. Another kind of a big thing we had to fix, if you remember, was the starter. The teeth here are bad on the drive gear, and we did the research on it, and you have to get this whole assembly. You can't just get the gear itself. Here is the new one. This is a 9-tooth, and it fits with our 124-tooth flywheel ring gear. So I want to get this reassembled. We'll do a bench test real quick, and I think we'll be good to go. These 2 little teeth just fit down inside that gear right there. And this goes in. We need to put that pin in. And we'll put a new cotter pin right there. So when you're inside the vehicle and you press on the foot pedal, it throws that rod and kicks the drive gear out into the ring gear of the flywheel. Here I'm using my old zip tie trick to hold back the brushes while I reinstall the armature. That allows it to drop right into place. And then the zip ties get cut away and removed. All right, next let's get this coil replaced and all the distributor components. Here you can see what we're dealing with here. It's just a lot of rust and dirt. This thing has got some age to it, doesn't it? Wow. Well, I'm sticking with my first guess. I think this is the original coil that came with the engine. And right there it says Lucas. Here's our replacement coil. And you can see how much smaller it is than the old one. So this bracket is never going to fit this little coil. And of course it did not come with a bracket. Those are sold separately. But luckily I found one in my stash of parts that I think will fit. So we'll just clean 50 years off of these studs and get the new one installed. All right, I've got the coil mounted to the engine block, and now we're going to attach the distributor wire. The positive side comes from the battery, negative side goes to the distributor. All right, we got some distributor components to replace now. This rotor is completely shot. The tip of it is rusted and literally corroded and eaten away on the tip there. So we have to replace this. We couldn't just get the rotor by itself, so it came with the kit with a new condenser, new points, and a new cap. So as long as we're in here, I think we'll go ahead and replace all that stuff. So the manual says the point gap should be 20 thousandths right there. So I'm going to rotate the engine around until we have our gap. And first we'll measure it and see what the gap is now, and then we'll leave it on the high point of the lobe for when we install the new one. You can see it's got 4 lobes on the shaft there. That's what forces the points open and closed. Let's go around another time to the next one. So here's our 20 thousandths feeler. It's actually pretty good. All right, let's get these points removed and get the new condenser and points installed. I'm going to magnetize my tip here. Looks like there's a little bolt in that part. Unfortunately, I don't have a wrench that small, so we'll just use these vice grips. This will be just fine if we're careful. All right, good. It was just kind of a blade terminal there. You don't have to take that bolt all the way out. Just loosen it and slide this out. I like to do things one step at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and get this condenser installed, except for the wire, and then we'll go and do the points. But now we can get the points out. So I think we just need to remove the mounting screw here, and the whole thing should just come out. The whole plate comes out like that. And when you get new points, be sure and hit them with some brake clean or some sort of solvent on both of the contacts and get them wiped off real good, because a lot of times they'll come with a coating of oil from the factory, and you don't want that stuff on there. So get them cleaned off real good before you install them. Get the points slipped over that bolt before I install them. That might make it easier. Let's see. Well, fast forward about an hour and a half, that tiny little screw stripped out on me. It's a 632 screw, and I didn't have another one of those in my drawer. At least I couldn't find one. So I had to stop what I was doing, go to the hardware store, get another one, got that installed. So that's all done. The condenser is in and secure with new points. I've already got them gapped to 20 thousandths. I'm going to rotate the motor around, and you watch that gap and see how it opens and closes. Before we put the rotor on and button this up, I'm going to put some dielectric grease on the lobe. Not a lot, just a little bit on each one perhaps. Okay, now the rotor finally goes on, and it can only go on one way because it's got a flat spot there. All right, now the new distributor cap goes on. I've already got a dot to denote number 1 cylinder. We know that because we made a dot on the old cap before I took it off. Parts to come in the mail. I thought we'd tackle this fan here. If you remember from the last video, I pointed out that somebody in the past had broken off this bolt right here. So we need to get that out and fixed and get a new bolt put back in. But before we can do that, we have to take the fan blade off. So that means we have to get these 3 bolts out, and you can see how kind of old and crusty and rusty they are. All right, there's the one that's broken off. I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with some rust converter and get this all cleaned up, and then we'll primer it and paint it just so it's nice and fresh when we put it back on. Good. All right, we just punched all the way through. So now see if I can find an easy out that'll fit. Well, it started to come out and then it stopped. Well, I'm making good progress here, but this easy out is just a hair too small. I do not have another easy out that will fit this. I could go to the store and buy one, but for now I'm gonna try another left-handed drill bit that's just a little bit larger. Well, sorry for jumping ahead here a little bit, but I could not get it out with the easy out. So I went ahead and drilled the next size up and tapped it to 5/16/18. The original ones are 1/4-20. And I think we're ready to go here. I've already got the belt retensioned. I went ahead and cleaned up the pulley and got the rust off of it and the grime. Just gave it a quick shot with some black paint just to clean it up. I did the same thing with the fan, and we'll give it another shot here once we get it all installed. All right, that repair is complete. I'm happy with that. I also fixed this fitting today. If you remember from the first video, I think it was, I could just grab it with my fingers and rotate it back and forth. It was pretty loose. I'm surprised it wasn't leaking from there. Anyway, we got that fixed. You cannot spin that 360 degrees because of this big mounting plate. So I had to remove the fuel pump from the block. And then of course I cleaned up the block and the face of the fuel pump. Cut myself a new gasket because the old one was all nasty. And I got it all resealed. So that's good to go. However, this old fuel line is kind of coming loose from this fitting. So now I have to remove this from the fuel pump and then fabricate a new fuel line for it. Also, the two heater hoses needed to be replaced. So I have them removed and I've got the pipes cleaned up there, ready for installation. All right, I've got the heater hoses installed. They are all set to go. As I was getting those clamps tightened down, I was kind of leaning over the battery and I noticed that we were getting a lot of debris, rust and dirt and stuff falling from the bottom of the battery down there. So it'll only take a minute. Let me get this battery out and I'll take a look at that battery tray. Based on that debris down there, I have a feeling we got a pretty rotten tray there. Well, this is pretty much what I expected based on that debris that was falling out from the bottom of it. It's somewhat solid over here, but over here it's very thin. And in fact, right there, it's so thin it's not even there. So this metal in here is not really repairable. In lieu of ordering an entirely new battery box, I think I can just maybe cut this out and weld in another plate. All right, I've got the battery tray removed from the truck, and this is what we got to work with. Maybe I don't have to cut the whole thing out. Maybe I can cut it to right about there, and then we'll make a new piece for this side. All right, I've got the rotten part cut out. That's a lot of this garbage here. So now I'll hit the rest of this stuff with some rust converter, and hopefully it'll turn out okay. We can reuse all this. I think what I'll do, rather than just weld a patch panel in there, I'm going to weld a support bar, just one, along the back here. So that will just give it some of its rigidity back. And then I think I'll cut a plate to fit this whole section and just drop it in. I've already got my support bar made and ground on the end in preparation for the weld. We're going to weld it right there. Well, it's all welded up. I'm really happy with it. It feels good and secure. I ground down the welds a little bit, make it look pretty. So now I'm just going to hit the rest of it with a wire wheel just to get the remaining surface rust off of it. Then we'll hit it with a thick coat of primer. We'll come back and paint the whole thing black, and then we'll put our new piece in here. The paint has had a chance to dry, and I've got myself a template cut out here of how I want my piece to fit. Hey, I think we got it on the first try. That looks really good. So now, before I permanently attach this to the tray, I want to primer the underside of it so it's not just bare metal under there. And then when I get it installed, we'll give this a thin coat of primer, and then we'll shoot the whole thing again with some more black paint. My original plan was to weld this plate in, but I'm not going to do that. I've decided I'm going to use some pop rivets. So let's give that a try on this corner here and see how it looks. And see if this does what we want. Yeah, I like that. It looks nice. Looks nice on the bottom too. You stick the fat part in the hole, and then put the skinny part up in that hole in the tool. Make sure it's flush, and then start to squeeze the tool. That's once. And again. Okay, now it's broken itself off. You let go of the tool, and it drops the rest of it out. And that's all there is to it. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. The rivets are nice and flat. They're not going to interfere with the battery when we put it in. And here's the finished product. All right, the engine is reinstalled back in the truck. All the flange bolts are tight, the motor mounts are good and secure. And here's my fuel line repair. I bought a straight section of fuel line with 2 fittings on the end. I shaped it and I cut it to size and reflared both ends, and I got it reinstalled. I'm happy with the way it fits, and it's a big improvement over what was in there before. We've got our new motor mounts installed, and just a side note, see that bracket that the motor mount is sitting on? That is, I think, some sort of a homemade deal. I think whenever this engine was swapped out, they put different style motor mounts in there, and had to make a little bit of a modification on the right side. On the left side, they did not need to make a modification. It fit the way it is. However, I think they probably should have made some type of modification on this side. If you look at it real close, you can see that the motor mount is twisted to the right just a little bit. That's because the holes for these bolts right here don't line up perfectly. I got the engine installed and got the motor mount on that side tightened down, and then came over to this side. It's probably about a 1/4 inch off, maybe a little bit more than that. 1/4 inch may not sound like a long way, but when we're trying to line up bolts for motor mounts, that's a really big deal. So it took me quite a while to get that motor mount to fit, and as it is, it's still stressed a little bit because it's cocked a little bit to the right. And that actually might be part of the reason that old motor mount had cracked. So that's not something we're going to address now, because everything is in and everything is tight and secure, and it's going to be just fine like that. Probably for years it would be just fine like that. If we have to take the engine out again down the road, we can address that then. So I think we'll wrap this up here. We've got a lot more to do to get everything attached to the engine and get it ready to run again. Still waiting on the carburetor to arrive in the mail. It is on back order, so hopefully that won't hold us up too long. But we'll save that for the next video when we get everything buttoned up. We'll get the hood back on, and hopefully this thing will be running again. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, we'll see you on the next one. Take care.